Hey guys, welcome to Vanishing Gates. As always, I am your host, Jay, into the weird and the strange. Jack is going to be on the show. He is out looking for a lost puppy. Long story, guys. So, tonight, we want to talk a little bit about a cigar of the show. We have Don Fulano. They're terrible. Don't smoke those. Mine actually was already burnt out. It's sad. Let's see, what else do we got going on here? Usually Jack does this part, guys. I'm super confused. I'm good at this. There we go. So, Paco's not with us tonight. He was at a beer festival. He's properly inebriated, I'm sure. Yeah. So anyway, cigar of the show's done. Let's talk about our first sponsor, Cotton Studios. Check out Jason Glenn's work on his Facebook page, Cotton Studios. He's really cool, makes some really cool stuff. We're right around Halloween, haunt season. So check his stuff out and pick that up online. You can find him on Facebook. And I am having technical difficulties. Let's see. Sorry, guys. I'm having some issues again. It's beautiful. Anyway, there. So, the next one is ProPrismDesign.com. You want to check out her work. She makes mugs, bumper stickers, T-shirts, all that stuff for your designs, graphic designs. Check her out. Give her a shout out from us. Tell her we sent you. All right. That said, now that I'm all discombobulated, I want to welcome our guest on, host of the Nighttime Podcast. If you guys haven't listened to the Nighttime Podcast, you need to. Check it out. It's on iTunes, I believe, or iPodcast. I listen on Spotify quite a bit, but he's on tonight to talk about the mystery of Oak Island. I want to introduce you guys, Jordan Boneparte. Hey, Jordan.
How's it going, Jay? Happy to be here.
Good. I seem to be having a technical sound issue. Just give me one moment. I'm sorry about that, Jordan.
Yeah.
We've got some interesting feedback coming on. Oh my goodness. All right. There we go. I think we
Nothing
are.
like live podcasting.
This is why live is the most horrible thing you can ever do. I don't know why I did this to myself. Anyway. Why am I getting feedback here? I just have a weird echo in my ear here for some reason. I can't really figure out why. Like I said, Jack normally does this, and he has vanished to look for dogs. Just like the gates, they've vanished. Oh, off to a spotting good start. Anyway, I'll just deal with this echo on my side. I don't think it's coming through. Guys in chat, if you hear that echo, let me know, and I'll continue to try to work on it. Otherwise, I'm just going to ignore it, because we have about a 30-second delay anyhow. So I'm hearing myself over and over and over. It's driving me insane. I don't know why I have playback on. Let's see. Playback devices. There we go. Maybe I'll just mute my playback. Sorry, guys. I'm trying, guys. I'm not very technical here. I'm not very good at this. It's Jack's department. Sorry, Jordan.
Take your time.
Thank you for your patience. Guys, so if you ever wondered about starting a live video show podcast thing, now you know not to do it. It's my best advice. It's going to drive you crazy. Let's see. Where is my mixer? Maybe I'll just play this. There. That should work. All right. I'm back. Oh, sorry, guys. I figured it out. Okay. Jordan, thank you.
No problem at all.
So, Jordan, for the folks that don't know about you and your show, can you give a little heads up on who you are and where you're from?
Sure. I'm Jordan Boneparte. I host the Nighttime Podcast. I'm out of Halifax, Nova Scotia. And on my show, I cover mainly Eastern and Atlantic Canadian true crime, mysteries, paranormal stories, and just kind of weird and wonderful things like Jesus appearing at a Tim Hortons in Cape Breton, that kind of thing.
That's awesome, man. I actually have a your stickers from the older graphic in front on my camera. I keep it on the show here. It's in front of my jar of eyeballs because I try to promote the show because I do listen. I love it. It's great. And
Great.
I have to say, man, you're pro.
Oh yeah.
You put so much insight and knowledge, guys. You don't understand. He puts so much insight and knowledge and education into his shows. You really have to go listen to it for sure. Not yet
Yeah.
though. Wait till the show's over.
Yeah, I definitely like a lot of people say they like research and stuff for their podcast. I'm sure they do, but I do a ton. Like I kind of my personality. I'm kind of like the obsessive compulsive type. So if I get into a story, I'll try to like within a week or something or 2 weeks, I'll like eat, sleep, and breathe whatever the topic is that I'm interested in. And so by the time I put an episode together, I usually know things inside out. And I'm also like not one to just kind of like read online and stuff. If I'm covering a story and there's people involved, I'll go to pretty great lengths to get in touch with them, whether that's sending letters, phoning them over and over again, that sort of thing. So I generally like when I put up like kind of my goal with my show is whatever topic I'm covering, I want like the end result, like that podcast when I release it, to be kind of like the most comprehensive version of that story. So yeah, but I'm glad whenever people say like you knew whatever story it was well, I kind of take pride in that because I try to avoid as much getting into like the speculation and whatnot, and just kind of stick with the facts and just get the story out.
Yeah, it definitely shows. Like it shines through really well. You can tell that you're very researched thoroughly. I'm more of a hackney kind of guy. I'm more for entertainment, whereas I feel like listening to your show, I actually learn something.
Oh, cool.
So
Well, yeah, sorry.
No, go ahead.
No, I was going to say I would like to be able to do that. The difference is like with you, you have a co-host. So when you have a co-host, you can kind of chat about things and kind of bounce ideas off each other and keep a conversation going. But when you're a solo host, you kind of have no idea. You have no option other than to just like put the story out in a really clear and concise way because I can't really have a conversation.
Yeah, I will say though, your interviews are really awesome. The way you speak to people and the questions you ask, they're really insightful. I was listening
Cool.
to what was it? The most recent one with the little girl that vanished. That one.
Yeah, Michaela Bali, her mother
Yes.
Paula was the guest.
Yeah, and oh my gosh, man, you handled that in a way. I don't know that I could. I don't know that I could handle that at all. Like with in a, it just seems so hard to, you know. And I know you're a parent, so that oh gosh.
Yeah, it's dark. Like when you're talking to the parent of a missing child, it's dark and it's hard to get past the emotion. But at the same time, I'm kind of thinking about like I want to get like the best telling of the story out of them and get all the emotion and all the details out so I can put that together and share it with other people and make them want to get involved. So it's like I'm kind of like trying to not let it affect me for the benefit of the story being told to whoever's next in line after me to hear what I put together. But that one, like with interviews, I don't even consider myself like an interviewer or anything. I've always been the type where I can just talk and talk and talk. So my quote unquote interviews, it's really just me like talking to someone. So I think it comes across as genuine and where I'm not like a professional journalist or something like that. A lot of times the people I get in touch with, they kind of talk to me very honestly and open. So it just ends up sounding like a genuine conversation. And I think the big thing to get, like you said, like some of the questions seem good and stuff. All that really is kind of before I go into an interview, I'll come out with I'll come in with kind of a list of things that I want to get them to touch on, and I just put it in chronological order and just kind of go through it. And just I don't know, it just ends up working. But I'm an absolute amateur.
Yeah, well, it doesn't show. It shows you do. The sincerity definitely comes out. Absolutely. Like I was talking to my co-hosts, and I was like, "Guys, you don't understand. He's like the most polite person I've ever listened to."
Yeah, Mama raised me right.
So another reason I wanted to have you on is for the topic for tonight. We had one of our viewers lives in Winnipeg, and he suggested we talk about Oak Island and the Oak Island mystery. So I know a little bit about it, some of it from your show, your extensive series on Oak Island. By the way, guys, His podcast has an extensive series on Oak Island. You should definitely give it a listen. But also, just growing up, you hear stories about it, and I've always been intrigued by the unexplained for my whole life. It's always been something that's tugged at me. So, for those who don't know, can you kind of explain what Oak Island is a little bit?
Yeah, like basically, in its most essential way, it's I believe the world's longest running treasure hunt. With Oak Island, it all started, I think, about 221 years ago, where basically, and stories differ on what people believe. There's a few versions of the story, but basically, around 1799, a group of people. For a variety of reasons, again, depending on what story you decide to go with, they ended up digging a hole on a small island in Nova Scotia, in this area where there's this area that's peppered with small islands. There's a couple hundred small islands, and on Oak Island, one of them, these guys started digging, and basically the story is they dug maybe a foot down into the ground, and they found a layer of flagstones, which is just flat stones, and they pulled them all up, and they had reasons to believe that there was something underneath it, and they just found more dirt. And when they dug down, they've actually got 10 feet, they found a layer of parallel logs, just like cut logs, just laying next to each other. So they assumed something interesting was underneath, and they pulled the logs up, and they dug down, and found nothing but dirt until 10 feet later found another layer of logs. But basically, in the end, after uh, the next 5 or 10 years of digging and investors and all people, all this stuff going on, they ended up digging down and finding layers of logs every 10 feet until they got to about the 90-foot level. But the deeper they got, the stranger things got, where they were finding not only logs, but the logs were kind of packed with a type of clay, perhaps added to prevent water from seeping through. And then even further down, they were finding the clay was mixed with coconut fibers. And for anyone who hasn't been to Nova Scotia, we don't have a lot of coconuts down here, and there's no coconuts near here. So it just led people to believe that this is a man-made. They call it the money pit, but people believe it is man-made, possibly to have hidden, again, depending on what you believe, a variety of precious artifacts or treasure or religious artifacts are believed to be buried there. And there's also believed to be booby traps to prevent people from accessing whatever the treasure is below. Basically, to cut the story short, or to get the unnecessary, or to prevent including the unnecessary info, when they dug down to a certain length, the pit that they were digging, as they were finding logs every 10 feet, it remained dry till about the 90-foot level, at which point they found a large stone, a flat stone that was carved with strange lettering that nobody was able to definitively interpret up till now, and the stone has since been lost, so it may never be interpreted, because the carvings or the symbols that were carved in it that people have now that they're looking at may not be actually 100% accurate, so it's almost impossible to figure out what was on there. But anyway, they found this strange stone at the 90-foot level. Up until then, the pit was dry, and shortly after they passed the 90-foot level, it filled with water. That was perhaps seawater, but again, they're digging in basically the center of a small island. They've come to realize, in trying to prevent the water from entering the pit, that there appeared to be flood tunnels basically built into the island, allowing the water off the island to travel inland from a variety of angles and directions, basically preventing you from stopping it. And this is believed to be a booby trap. But this has been going on for 220 some years. Up to this point, I think 6 people had died while treasure hunting. Countless people have gone bankrupt or been hurt or lost their families or lost their fortunes. But up until now, very little has been pulled out of the land in terms of definitive proof that there's treasure. However, there is a lot of evidence that there's some man-made engineering project that occurred historically on the island. They found deep, deep, deep underground. And I'm talking, 180, 200 feet below the ground. They found pieces of chain and metal and just odd man-made objects that would indicate something spectacular happened on the island. So that's like 220 years in a nutshell.
Pardon me 1 second.
Yeah.
Oh, offspring. Children want waffles. It happens. So, the rock. That's interesting. So, is there that I didn't catch in the story the rock with the inscriptions on it.
People call it the 90-foot stone because basically as they were digging down again every 10 feet finding the logs, when they got to the 90-foot mark, so like the 9th set of these logs, on top of it was this stone, and it was a large rectangular stone, flat, with a carving into the stone. And if you search online, you'll find versions of that of the carving, but the problem is the version you find online of the symbols and whatnot is something that somebody drew from memory, somebody who had seen the stone. It got lost at some point, and people have looked for it like crazy, but have never been able to find it. It was lost sometime in the early 1900s. But the symbols that have been left behind, that again somebody redrew from memory that had seen it, they've been interpreted to mean, I think it was something like 20 feet below my 2 million pounds, something like that. But that's kind of, it's where that interpretation is based on what's may not be the accurate carving. It's kind of pointless to contemplate what it may be.
Okay, that's crazy. I wish we had that stone. Maybe we'd know a little more at this point.
Yeah, exactly. But the stone, at least at one time, existed. It's there's historical writing about the stone. There's a history of where the stone went from when it was found. It was in someone's home that was working on the island for a period of time. And the last place it was seen was in a bookstore in downtown Halifax, actually.
Oh.
It was kept in the window of the bookstore for a period of time, and people walking by saw it. And then it was taken from the window of the bookstore and laid in, embedded into the floor of, they don't know what building, but a building that was in the same block. That was a tile floor, and this was laid like one of the tiles. Because back then, Oak Island was thought to be a place of where pirates buried treasure, is what they thought back then. So again, I'm talking about the late 1800s, early 1900s. In Halifax, there's great interest at the time in pirate stories and whatnot, pirate lore. So this stone was kind of a fixture. Like people related it with Oak Island, so it kind of made its rounds around downtown Halifax, from wealthy business person to wealthy business person using it to promote their business. The problem is none of the photographs of it that exist show the carving. They're photographs from a distance where you just see the stone. So all that's left is a drawing that somebody made that had seen the stone many times.
Wow.
Yeah.
Go figure, right? Because that might give us a little more insight, So of course we lose it. That's why the mystery continues. Now, haven't they found things that I heard they found artifacts that shouldn't have been on the island based on the time frame? Is that accurate?
Not necessarily. It's just the main things that they have found are a lot less remarkable than what you read about. What the majority of what has been found is small scrapings of metal or links of chain. A pair of scissors from, I think, the 16 or 1700s was buried. Was found, I think, about 6 feet underground on the island, and they were of Spanish origin. A shoe was found that was, I think, like a size 10 shoe, made of leather, believed to be European. But as far as things out of time or that were completely shocking, the biggest thing and what you may be thinking of is the idea of the Roman sword. There was a rumor going around that a Roman sword was found on the island, but that sword was determined to be, I won't say a hoax, but it was determined to be a tourist kind of gift that was somebody had bought in like I think it was determined to be made in like the 1950s and sold kind of to tourists in somewhere in Europe. But somebody had linked the idea of a Roman sword with the island, and that became a big thing maybe 2 years ago.
Oh, okay. That sounds about right. So, Jordan, my co-host Jack is here.
Howdy.
Find your dog?
Yes, it did. Turns out,
Good work.
last place you look,
In the
inside.
house? Yeah, usually in the house. Go figure. That was cute.
Asleep under the bed.
Oh my goodness, probably.
Only after I ran about a mile, though.
It's good for you though. Sweat looks good on you, buddy. So, so Jack, to keep you up to date, we're talking about, of course, Oak Island and the stone that has been missing. That had an interpretation that we cannot really figure out because the stone has now been in the floor of a building in Halifax.
Why is it?
Yeah, and if you've ever watched the TV show The Curse of Oak Island, like a lot of these things are revisited on the show. And last season there was I think a full 2 episodes that they dedicated to a search for the stone, and they went through a few of the older buildings in downtown Halifax and interviewed a few historians that were involved in the buildings that the stone was rumored to be at. But in the end, they settled on, the stone exists, but they don't know where to look for it.
That sounds like a mistake.
It's like anytime you need a screwdriver, you can never find one, or nail clippers.
Yeah, nail clippers. You check with your wife. That's where they are.
Okay, so you've been to Oak Island, right?
Oh yeah, a bunch of times. It's only about I guess about a 45-minute drive from my house, and I have a few friends who are involved in the TV show, so I got to tour it a few times with them. But I've been on the general public tours. Like each summer they'll sell tickets where they do a guided tour. So I usually go once or twice a year on the guided tour. But then I have some friends that are involved in the production of the TV show, and that was kind of that's the best. Like we went last year, me and 4 or 5 of them, and we got on golf carts and we just kind of cruised around the island, going to the places that you don't go for the regular tour, like because the regular tour is pretty like pedestrian, like they stick to kind of the main locations. But when we went on our golf cart, we went to all sorts of weird places. I actually put a couple photos up on my Facebook, like the Nighttime Podcast Facebook, where I kind of went to some off the beaten path places that are pretty neat. It's like the island is truly magical, like, and it's not just there's of course the history and the treasure hunt, but even just being on the island and walking around, like you just feel like you're in like a place out of a storybook or something. I love it there.
That's so cool. Can you describe the scenery to the viewers that haven't seen it? Like I've never seen it. I've seen pictures, but it's not quite the same if you haven't been there. Does it feel man-made or does it feel altered when you're on it?
No, it like the island itself, when you're in the center and you can't see the water surrounding you, it just seems like anywhere else in Nova Scotia. It's pretty typical in that regard. But what makes it so fascinating is as you walk through it, there's just so much evidence of the work that's been done on there. Like you as you walk through, there's kind of holes dug all over the place, and there's areas where like things are just like old foundations of structures and stuff that have all been kind of dug out around. And there's also, they call them boreholes, and that's it's like a pipe that's put into the ground, and they can pull out like the core sample as they dig the pipe down. They can pull out like a long, like almost like a straw of rock to look at what's under the ground. And there's boreholes all over the island. So everywhere you look, there's just pipes sticking out of the ground where people have dug to see what's down there. So it's just, there's lots of evidence of the treasure hunt. And then the fact that I know the history of it. So as I walk through it, these places that you get to see and some of the stones that you get to see, it's really magical. Like I don't know, one thing, I don't know if you're familiar with, but they call it Nolan's Cross. And there's a guy who's been working. He actually just passed away last year. His name is Fred Nolan. He's lived on the island for maybe 50 or 60 years. And the entire time he lived there, he was searching for the treasure. And what he was doing, rather than digging holes and looking under the ground, he was looking on the surface by mapping out, like doing topographical mapping of, where the hills and valleys are. He was mapping out where all the stones on the island were. And what he was looking for was anything that seemed unnatural or out of order. And then when he'd find anything strange, he was kind of seeing how it fit with everything else to try to basically crack the puzzle just by looking at the surface. And what he ended up finding was a large, basically when you look from above, like on a map of the island from above, he found a series of rocks that seemed out of place, that when looked at from above, it just looks like a large Christian cross. So a lot of his work is looking into what they now call Nolan's Cross. And so when I'm there, I know the different stones from Nolan's Cross, and just seeing them up close and getting a look at it, a rock that seems unusual on this unusual island. It's just such a cool place.
Definitely, I got to get out there one of these days.
Oh yeah,
it just seems like somewhere.
Even just to go on the tour and walk through it, like the people who are on that tour with you are all like so interested in it. And the tour guide is he was on my podcast. His name's Charles Barkhouse, and he's on the TV show The Curse of Oak Island. This guy's like a dictionary or an encyclopedia of Oak Island. He's lived on there and worked on it basically his whole life. His job title is like the historian of the Oak Island Society, which is like the group that oversees the island. And as you walk around, he can tell you every fact and every detail about every rock and twist and turn on the island. So it's just so cool to be there.
That's awesome, man. Yeah, I caught that. I caught like the entire series, I believe, unless there's some that you haven't aired or something for the Oak Island thing.
Yeah, no, there's going to be more coming soon. But now on my show, I have 4 episodes about it. But I see the sticker there for Astonishing Legends. They did a 3 or 4 part series that's just incredible. It goes way beyond what I did, where they went really detailed through the history, where I kind of gave a crash course in the history, and then I spent more time speaking with the actual people. Like I did an episode which was an interview with Dave Blankenship, who moved to the island as a young man back in the 50s with his dad to basically try to buy a portion of the island and dig for treasure. And they managed to, and he's just been living there, since then, digging with his dad, doing crazy stuff. So that was one of my favorite episodes of my podcast, was talking to David Blankenship, just because it's somebody that I had read about since I was a little kid, and to get the opportunity to talk to him, was really cool.
Now, is he the one, his dad is one that almost died and he saved his life? Is that?
Yeah, exactly.
Okay, hearing that story was awesome.
Oh, yeah.
It seems like you gotta hear the story.
Their life story's just nuts. They need to write a book or something.
Yeah, I'm sure other people will write books about. Those kind of people, those like Indiana Jones style people that end up in history books, or people end up writing about them after they're already long gone.
What episode is this that we can, for our fans, so we can introduce those who may not know your show? We can introduce them or something?
I would just say go and check out all of his shows. They're all good.
I don't number them. I used to number them so I could say it was episode number or whatever. But if I have a series on Oak Island, and they're all just called like Oak Island Part 1, Part 2, Part 3, and I think it goes up to Part 4. But I don't number the episodes, because I found when I was doing that, people were kind of like treating it like a Netflix series. People would go and start at the first episode and listen through, but it was kind of like I got better as I went along. So my first, and second and third episode are probably my worst. So by not numbering them, it kind of encourages people to look at the episode description and pick something that seems, relevant to them and go from there. So anyway, my Oak Island ones are probably around the 10th or 12th or something. It was kind of right when I was starting to learn how to do it, so they're not that bad.
They're all good. I've listened. I like them. So I would suggest to everybody check out the Nighttime Podcast. So what do you think what do you think is the mystery behind Oak Island? If you were to break it down in your head and try to bring it to like do an Occam's razor thing, what would you think it is?
Yeah. Well, I have thought about it times, and it's the 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 grounded logical part of me thinks that it could all be explained with a natural kind of sinkhole like phenomenon. So in that area where Oak Island is, the the bedrock, or like the ground beneath your feet, is a type of stone that it has a heavy salt content. So when it gets wet, it can kind of dissolve. So underground there would be lots of underground waterways, basically like caves full of water underground, and they have a problem with what they call sinkholes, which is basically the ground giving way and the earth basically falling in on itself over, it's a geological phenomenon that will happen over time. And even where I'm from in Cape Breton, which is an island but a good distance away from Oak Island, 500 kilometers or so, very close to my house, we had a sinkhole that when on my street, if you had an old fridge or a stove, they would bring that and they would throw it in the sinkhole, and then basically 5 years later, there's no trace of it because it's probably 50 feet underground by that point, and just getting crushed. So some people believe what's happening on Oak Island is just an area with one or many sinkholes, and that's what's pulling pieces of chain and all this stuff so far underground, and that would also explain the underground waterways that they found. Because again, as they're digging, they're having a hard. The various treasure hunters over the last 220 some odd years have had problems preventing water from getting into the center of the island, and in trying to block them, they found a huge series of underground caverns and waterways that could all be explained by the natural geological properties of the ground. So a part of me thinks it can all be explained by the natural, those natural processes. But at the same time, there's just so much strange stuff over the years that have been found, so much evidence of human activity from hundreds of years ago that just seems unusual, that I can't help but think something unusual happened on the island at some point.
Yeah.
But as far as what, all this treasure hunting, people don't know what they're searching for. Nobody has found anything of value with the exception of the odd coin or something like that.
Yeah.
So it's kind of hard to say. It's just, I think in my heart, I feel like something unusual is happening there. My brain says it's just a collection of good storytellers misinterpreting a natural phenomenon. So I guess that's the best way I can sum it up. But I would love to know what's happening there. But I think with Oak Island, as you'll find, the more you get into the story and the history and the various people involved, is what's most intriguing isn't so much the evidence of treasure and the different theories, but I think what's most intriguing and what really captures a lot of the hardcores is the stories of the people who are involved in this treasure hunting. It seems like since the beginning of time, 220-ish years, Oak Island has just managed to draw in interesting people from all over the world that have a belief that they have some kind of special ability to crack the code that nobody else has cracked and find the quote unquote treasure. So as you read the history and you read about all the people who become involved, that's what's so fascinating. So to me, I'm more interested in the history and the individual stories than the vague clues and theories. But it's just Oak Island. There's so much mystery there that it's just basically like a giant sandbox for your imagination, because there's all these interesting people that have tried all these different things. It's been going on for so long that it's kind of like a period piece, because you can think about there's these people who are working on this in the late 1700s doing all this bizarre stuff. But then there's also the theories that involve history and different military and political history, and there's just so much going on there. And then there's even present day celebrities involved, where the famous actor John Wayne was involved. He was an investor in some of the digging, as well as the Australian American actor Earl Flynn, who was a celebrity at the time. and even a American president, Franklin Delano Roosevelt. He was on the island at several times digging himself. And throughout the length of his presidency and throughout his entire life, he actually stayed up to date in what was going on in Oak Island. He had, like when he passed away, he left behind a collection of letters and basically all of his writing. And he had basically for the balance of his life pretty much had communicated with people who lived and worked on Oak Island to stay up to date on the mystery.
You know that
It sounds like FDR for sure.
that's
Yeah.
that's really
Exactly.
interesting because
there's photographs of him on the island with a shovel in his hand.
What do you say, Jack?
that's interesting because I mean, it seems people are drawn there, and the thing is they don't necessarily. It sounds like because I missed part of it, and for the limit of what I know about Oak Island is really small, probably outdated by now. And but they know that like Spanish treasure fleets have gone down in the Caribbean, and people are not looking there, even though they like people look, but not as often as people go to like Oak Island. It sounds like it's people just keep getting drawn to an island that they're not sure if there's treasure there or if there's anything important. But meanwhile, there is treasure in certain locations that we know. It's just getting to those treasures is sometimes difficult. But it sounds like rich people who have the money, the backing, that they can do the diving and stuff. They can hire divers to go look. Just aren't. They're going to Oak Island instead. It's interesting that they're drawn to this place that doesn't necessarily have proof, or they have very limited proof, just stories that there are things there. It's just interesting to me that they're drawn to a place.
Which is really ironic because if you think about it, you're more likely to find something diving in where ships have sank than going to an island which has literally cost people their entire life,
Exactly.
financial and otherwise.
That's what I'm saying by what interests me about it. The island is interesting enough that it's drawing people there. I mean, considering the amount of islands that have had treasure fleets attached to them.
I can kind of feel the idea of what you're talking about, the natural issues there, like it's a natural sinkhole, like liquefaction and stuff like that. I can see that, for sure. I kind of view it, I think, more like the Voynich manuscript,
I have no idea.
where nobody can really translate it, but it's really cool to look into. But it's probably just some
it
monk
seems
that made
like there's
stuff up.
something there, just like the Voynich manuscript. Like you don't know what it means, but it seems like it's probably important. And that's that's a good analogy for Oak Island. But some people also like the people who like the locals around Nova Scotia who don't believe in the Oak Island mystery. What a lot of their theory is that it's a collection of people over time who were trying to inflate the value of their property, thus adding to the story and adding their own little take on it. Where some of the first people to dig and involve themselves in the treasure hunt owned land on the island, and oftentimes they seemed to just be on the brink of a discovery when they would sell their business and their land to somebody who was going to take over the dig. This is again 200 some years ago, but it seems like over time that's happened countless times. So some people, they call it salting a mine, and I guess if you're in the mining industry, what you may do is before you run out of money, you find something that shows you're close to gold or you're close to whatever it is you're looking for. Or there's some evidence that there's going to be oil or that sort of thing to inflate the value. So some people believe that's what's at play at Oak Island.
Okay.
I don't necessarily believe that, but I'd have to mention it because that's what a lot of people think.
Yeah, I can.
After all this
I can
time,
see that.
I mean, after all this time though, and the amount of people who would have, like I said, the wealthy people investing money, I don't think they would put so much effort and time into it if they weren't at least sure they were going to find something. I mean, it seems like it'd be after what 200 years. You said it'd be kind of a known at that point, right?
You would think.
I mean, okay, I'm not going to name names. I'm not going to say the name of the social media company, but they just sold for trillions of dollars and everybody lost their butt the next day on the stock market that bought in. So, not naming names. People dream big, though. The idea, okay, so the craziest thing is, I think the biggest treasure we're going to get from Oak Island is the story and the mystery and what it makes people look into.
I agree with that. I think the Oak Island treasure is the amazing history and the colorful people that have attached their own stories to the island. I agree with that 100%.
It's not so much the destination; it's the journey. Like
I think if there was treasure there and there were sinkholes, then theoretically it might be actually smarter to check the water around the island. and potentially find where the flows of water go, because I think there's several islands out there, right? It's on a chain.
Oh
And
yeah, there's hundreds of
then
small islands just like Oak Island.
if there was treasure, because if it did have a fleet that buried there, they might not may never have known about the sinkholes, and so whoever buried there might be treasure that people have found that's left from there, but it all sunk into these waterways, and the waterway might have carried it out. Like when it left, it might have carried out most of the stuff and went into the ocean around the island, or potentially hit other islands. Like
That makes sense.
against their side. I mean, theoretically, if you wanted to find treasure from Oak Island, that might be the best thing, is to scour the land around it potentially, or the island around it, or the water around it.
Yeah.
Wasn't there a story about one of the divers, like someone was diving, like after the guy put the train cars down, they like found a pocket of water and were diving in there and looking around and found something, or said they found something?
Well, what it is they had dug. You're talking about David Blankenship, who was the guest on my show, and his dad Dan. What they did was they did a lot of incredible work with very low budget, basically just being very clever about what they were doing. Basically, they had bought a couple decommissioned train cars and basically put them one on top of the other in underground. Like they dug a hole and basically dropped the train car down there, and that way they were using the train cars almost as the shell of their pit that they dug down. They dug down, I think, about 180 feet, and then they found a cavern underground. The whole thing was full of water, but this is back in the 60s. Dan Blankenship was diving down into what it basically is a large room deep underground, and he thought he had seen a treasure chest, a skeleton, or maybe like the arm of a skeleton, and a couple odd things underground that he believed he found. But in the years later, like talking about present day now, what has come out is that like on the show The Curse of Oak Island, they tried to go down and investigate this area, and they did in fact send some divers down there using modern equipment. But back then, the way Dan Blankenship dove, he didn't use the right equipment, and he didn't follow the appropriate methods that you would nowadays. And what the professional divers say is the way he did it, when the effect it would have had on his body when he was down the bottom would be similar to being like really, really drunk. So they said, like, anything you saw down there or thought you saw down there, take it with a grain of salt, because he was so deep underground that the pressure would have such an effect on him that it just screws with you basically.
Yeah.
And they had on the TV show, they had sent divers down with high end cutting edge equipment or whatever, and they found nothing that wasn't nothing aside from just a natural cavity deep below the ground that was hollowed out by a regular geological activity in underground waterway.
Yeah.
But, so that was, depending on what you believe, it looks like there's nothing unique down there, but the people involved in the island still have faith that there's more to it. And as far as the last season of the television show, they plan to go back down there. That's as much as they said anyway.
Okay.
No, the question I have is, if this was back in the 60s, how soon after did they reattempt with more modern day equipment? Because erosion or liquefaction, I think you said it was, when the salt rock starts to go away. Maybe whatever was there, disappeared basically, and whatever could have been on a shelf basically eroded away and then went down the waterway.
Yeah, that's it was just a few years back, that like 3 years ago, that they sent 2 years ago they sent a diver down there. But before they did, they did some work to clean out the area, and it wasn't so much the breaking down of the bedrock and whatnot that was the problem, but instead it was the debris and rust and old pipes and stuff that were left behind by prior treasure hunters that they had to get out of there to allow divers to go down. And that's kind of been a problem that's plaguing Oak Island now, is whenever they're digging or searching for evidence of man-made activity, what they seem to find a lot of is things left behind by treasure hunters. So they're always finding things, like people who are searching today find things, and the first thing they need to determine is, how old is this thing? Because the age will say whether or not it's left behind by a prior treasure hunter over the last 200 and some odd years, or is it pre Oak Island treasure hunt. Thus, an original artifact. So kind of the magic number is if it's over, say, 250 years, it was there before all this treasure hunting started, so it would be considered original. And so that's kind of the battle that's playing out. It's it's so dangerous there because the ground is unstable because so much of it was dug out, and a lot of this started with I think it was like early 50s until the mid 50s. The guy who was in charge of basically treasure hunting on the island, his name's Robert Dunfield. His technique to dig was basically like shock and awe. Like he brought in the biggest equipment that up to that point the island had ever seen, and he just basically like raped and pillaged. Like he just had this huge heavy equipment. He even had a up until this point it was an actual island, but the equipment he wanted to bring on was so large that he actually had a causeway built from the mainland to the island to bring his big equipment on, and he just dug the whole thing up. And when he ran out of money, it was the island is completely different now than it was before he went there. So anything they're looking at on the surface of the island has been, for the most part, upset because Dunfield did so much extensive digging. And when you go, if you like Google like Oak Island, you'll find aerial photos from the period of time that he was there, and it just looks like something you'd expect from like the World War I or something. It's just the entire island's flat with craters. There's no trees or anything. It just looks like some guy with a bunch of bulldozers and cranes just dug the whole thing up. So
an archaeologist's worst nightmare.
That's what I was thinking.
We call him, people who are really into the island, his name is Dunfield, like D-U-N, but we call him Dumbfield because the work he did on the island was so damaging that a lot of the historical writing that the early treasure hunters left behind, you almost can't use it because they're talking about amount of feet from this tree, or the how many steps from this rock and all this sort of stuff. So all the original landmarks were bulldozed and destroyed and ruined by Dunfield. So he was so confident that he knew that he was going to find it with this, that he had no interest in trying to preserve the island. He just wanted to just dig a hole and get the treasure, but in doing so he caused so much damage. And now when they find if you're digging and you find a large rock underground and it has what appears to be carvings in it, it could be carvings, but it could also just be damage left from Dunfield's tools, or Dunfield's bulldozers and cranes and all this stuff. The current treasure hunters are very deliberate and cautious and careful about what they do and what effect it'll have on the island. So it's a completely different culture for the treasure hunters today.
That's sad because he literally wiped away history.
Potentially.
Well, no, I mean,
he wiped away an island and potentially history. I mean, if this guy was left in charge of the Mona Lisa, I think he would have cleaned it with a freaking steel wool.
Hell yeah.
Like,
you're exactly right.
Gosh,
we're gonna get to the bottom of this. Let's just use dynamite if we're gonna go fishing. That's the kind of person he is.
Have you ever seen an archaeologist at work? They sit there and they move a little dirt and then they brush it off, and it's just like the movies. They sit there and they take painstaking time to try to preserve whatever they find and that landscape around them. Otherwise, we wouldn't have the information we need. Which, in case if there is something there, because of this guy, we probably won't find it.
Well, if there was something there, and he did all that, there probably isn't something there now. Because if it was...
Yeah, could you imagine if he bulldozed a pile or scooped some stuff up and the treasure was only like 2 feet deep, and he just took this gaping amount of dirt and just buried it somewhere else with all the treasure in it?
It could happen, absolutely. It's just like, say, talking about ancient Egypt, there was a lot of people who were interested in stealing the gold and all this from, in the temples. So they would just, stick a bunch of dynamite, blow the rocks up, and go in there and just, take stuff and leave, and it would all get ruined. But then you have the archaeologist who very carefully documents everything they found and photographs it, carefully moves it away. So Dunfield was the equivalent of like a grave robber in ancient Egypt. He was just, tearing the mummy's arm off and ripping all the bandages off to see if they had rings on their hands. Like he was basically took that approach with the island.
I wonder if he's related to his descendants are the people that just sat their kid on that sarcophagus at the museum and cracked it, and then just walked out. You hear about that? That happened this week.
No, that would break my heart.
Oh no, it happened. Some family like wanted to take a picture with their kid in the sarcophagus, the sandstone, couple 100-year-old monk box, basically. Put the kid on it. The thing fell, and they just left. Like they didn't say anything to anybody. They just ghosted. They just were gone. That's exactly what this guy sounds like to me.
Jeez.
So I got my selfie.
I'm just reading about that story now.
Oh
The
man.
100-year-old coffin was broke
Yeah.
after a child was put in it for a photo opportunity. That's awful.
Yeah, this is why I don't do news on every show, because I read that and part of me was like laughing at just how stupid these people are, and they just left and inconsiderate, and part of me is just so sad and angry that I can't like fathom how you could do that. At least say something.
Like, it's not like they come up with these things every day.
No, it was the last of its
Yeah.
kind. It was the
Yeah.
last of its kind that they know of. They don't know of any more. That's exactly what this guy Dunfield reminds me of. Like, guys,
Upsetting.
I think we can all glean from this, guys. If you're all going to go treasure hunting, maintain at least part of the natural area. Okay, there's things you can use. There are tools we have now you can find things with. You know, there's radio scopes, there's metal detectors. What's that, LiDAR?
Let me do this in layman's terms for you. The turtle's going to win this race. Do not be the hare and cut through everything. Go slow and steady, and you'll actually find something probably.
I like that analogy. Kudos, Jack. Kudos.
Yeah, and not even just treasure hunting. Like if you're near something important or something very old, you know, you want to preserve it for further study. So like whatever it is that you're near, you just want to be careful. Like there's lots of historical ruins or artifacts that people will encounter at even local museums in whatever town you live in. You don't touch the exhibit. You just look at it and you're very careful. So that's kind of my thought about it.
Well, it goes back to like that the walls that you were talking about on one of your episodes around in your area.
Yeah.
That people move it and they do graffiti on it. You'll have no real, somebody took the time to try to rebuild it. You're just doing more damage than good.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah,
So.
that's the mystery walls, and they on the next season of Oak Island, I think they're going to be involved in it. Is at least what I heard, that they're gonna look into the mystery walls. So we'll see.
Oh, so they think they might be related?
Yeah, well, the mystery walls, there's no explanation for who built them and where they came from and why they're here and all that. So a lot of people have tried to connect them to Oak Island in some way. I've never seen anything that's conclusive, but I think on the next season of Oak Island, at least I heard that they're going to look into that, but I don't know how true that is. That they're going to look into a connection between them and Oak Island.
See, this is a downside about me never watching television. I haven't seen a single episode of this show, and it sounds really cool.
Yeah, it is. It is a really cool show. If you're going to watch anything, like that show that does a great job of telling the history of Oak Island and introducing you to the players involved and kind of walking you through their investigation. And although it does have a lot of quote unquote TV magic, where it's things that you can tell are set up and exaggerated, and there is a lot of that stuff that's going on, but it's also very genuine. Like the main people on the show are as passionate about the treasure hunt and the mystery as anyone, and they are investing their own money to explore it, do what they're doing there. So it's I think the show's great, although it has its problems, but aside from that, it's good. I can't stand TV that it's one of those shows where it's always from the very beginning, it's of the episode, it's coming up next this, and it's something you want to see, and then you watch for 50 minutes, and then it's after this break we'll get to it, and so it's always kind of teasing what's coming and recapping what's already happened. And so if you kind of just got rid of all the teasing and the recapping, every episode instead of 50 minutes would be 15 minutes.
No, I absolutely agree with you. It's like when Netflix goes, "Are you still watching?"
Yeah, that's just the way TV works. So what can you do about it?
Yeah, and they want to catch people up a little bit. That makes sense. I can't imagine if I tried to start every show of Vanishing Gates with, "If you weren't watching last week, here's what we talked about." I just can't.
Yeah. And then taking a break every 5 minutes, and then after the break, reminding people what has happened so far and what is expected to happen shortly.
Especially in a show that when you boil it down, it's probably like 40 minutes instead of an hour because of the commercials and everything else. It's like, how many breaks are you going to have and how many times are you going to do that? Oh, man. Television.
Well, I think I had read online somebody had taken each season of The Curse of Oak Island, the TV show, and they removed basically all the recap and all that stuff, and they made each season of the TV show like an hour and a half long documentary that just basically tells the story of the season. And I had never watched it, but I would like to watch that edit.
I think I'm gonna have to look that up because that sounds like it would save me a lot of time.
Oh yeah.
I feel like I'd be missing a bunch, but
18 hours, like each season's like 10 or 15 episodes. So
oh wow.
If you boiled it all down like that, it'd probably be pretty cool.
Well, Jordan, man, it's been an honor to have you on, man. It's really cool that you came on here to talk about Oak Island, even with you've been a good sport with all the technical difficulties. Those were cute, and the missing puppy. That was good.
Dogs go missing. It happens.
Yeah, they're only a few months old, so they're tiny.
Yeah, no, it's my pleasure. I'm like talking about Oak Island is there's very little I enjoy more, and then also like I love podcasts and podcasters who are genuine in their interest in discussing strange and unusual things. And so a show like yours, like Vanishing Gates, it's like you guys wouldn't be doing this if you weren't into it. Because it's not like, this isn't your job that you're paid to host this kind of show on a radio show. You're just two guys who are into this. So, that's what I love about podcasting and online, YouTube channels and all this sort of thing is rather than people trying to, sell ads to make me buy things, you're just getting genuine people talking about, cool stuff. So I dig what you're doing.
Yeah, I mean, don't get me wrong. I would love to get to the point where I can get paid to do this, make money doing this, and have it pay for itself because I'm so far in the red with this thing. But it's a passion. It really is. Like, man, I love doing it. We started actually as a podcast.
Essentially, we started as a podcast. The best part is we kind of remember how we started. We were playing pool in the garage, and we're like, it'd be great. I can't remember who we were listening to. I think it was the Nighttime Podcast.
It was Jordan.
And we were sitting there and we're like, you know what we should do? We should start our own show.
Well, I mean, I've been planning to do a show for like 5 years.
For me, it was like 5 minutes, and then like a week later, all of a sudden, we're like, okay, we're going to do a show every week, and we started off really small.
We were doing 2 shows a week at one point.
Eventually, we got it down to just Saturdays because we're like, okay, this is not going to work out because it's too scattered, and so we moved to just doing Saturday Live.
And then we like, hey, well, there's a camera, let's just do video because everybody else does just audio, and I mean, people want to look at strange and odd things. Here we are.
Exactly.
Doing it at video is cool. Like a lot of people, like it's almost like a different audience. So like with a podcast, there's a lot of people who just like listen to podcasts on their phones, but there's also a ton of people who are kind of doing the same thing, but just watching videos on YouTube and stuff. So, you guys got a cool thing going. It's a different kind of niche to talk about these sorts of things in the video format. And you got a cool set. I love the smoky skull there. That's very neat.
Good old Scully. Someone actually gave that to me, and I have no idea who it was. It showed up on my porch one day.
Huh, that's kind of creepy.
I accidentally dropped it.
No, yeah, he did. We did a live episode at a haunted pizza parlor, and he actually dropped it. But I fixed it. But no, yeah, it was weird because I'm known as like the Halloween guy. Like I start decorating like in a couple hours.
Oh yeah, that's me. I'm a Halloween guy. It's like I feel like the only time I could buy like stuff for my house is leading up to Halloween because I only like in my kitchen I want everything to be have skulls on it or have a witch or something or a pumpkin, something like that. So leading up to Halloween I feel like I can finally shop for household goods.
Yes, no, absolutely. People give me so much grief. Like
we have been doing this show for how many months now? Like I mean since November I think. I can't remember exactly when we started.
It's been a while.
It's been like 6 months.
I'd have to look at YouTube.
Maybe half a year. And as soon as we started, like 3 months, like 2 months in, before 4th of July, he's like, it's almost haunting season. And every episode.
Because I like to do the walk through haunted house thing. And you need months for preparation.
You got it.
my voice just completely decided to stutter on me again. It was cute.
Perfect.
But yeah, I mean, if I could have Halloween 365 days a year, I would totally have Halloween. I mean, I'm the guy that buys the big candy bars for the trick-or-treaters.
Yeah, you need to go to Salem. I just came back from Salem, Mass, just last week, and like Salem in mid-August feels like Halloween. It's every second store was a psychic, a fortune teller, a haunted this, a ghost horror. Every store sold skulls and pentagrams and pumpkins and crazy stuff. Salem is like the coolest place. If only it wasn't in the United States.
Oh yeah, I know. That's and it's so far from me. It's probably actually closer to you than it is to me. Actually, it literally is closer to you than it is to me.
For sure.
Because we're in California. Yeah. We're way on the other side of the world, basically.
Where are you? Did you say Calgary?
California.
California.
Yeah, Northern California.
I didn't realize that.
Yeah. Oh yeah.
Okay. I for some reason I thought you were in like Western Canada, but now that I'm thinking you're in Pacific time. Yeah. So it's Salem from where I am is just a 10-hour drive.
Yeah, see, for us, it's longer than that for a flight. I think it's like a 14-hour flight or something, or 17-hour flight.
Jesus.
Yeah, it's quite a ways away. On the upside is we're literally on the ocean, so we're about opposite of you as we can be, and be part of the body of the continent of America.
Yeah, you're talking about a different ocean.
Oh yeah.
Yeah, you're on the Pacific. I'm on Atlantic, but it's yeah, it's although like where I'm at in Canada, like we're right next to like Maine and Massachusetts and all that, but it's like crossing the border is like a different world. For one, like your imperial system is just crazy. We use the metric system, which just makes so much more sense.
No, it doesn't.
Yeah, but it's anyway, the U.S. is I'm happy to be back in Canada. I'll just put it that way.
I can't blame you. I have a buddy, like the one that suggested this topic for the show. He and I video game quite a bit together, and we sent each other some care packages. I tell you right now, man, that coffee crunch. Oh, I wish we had it here. We don't get that. Yeah. We don't get that here. And you guys have the best syrup on the planet.
I don't.
Oh yeah, we when I went down to Massachusetts and Chushits, however the hell you
I can't
that,
say it either. Don't worry.
Yeah, I brought a few friends that I have in Maine. I brought them care packages of like Canadian candy bars, chips, and stuff. They were digging it.
We just now recently got Kinder eggs.
He's way better than me. I only like the Trailer Park Boys.
I don't know what you're talking
Trailer Park Boys.
Yeah, I'm a fan of the show.
That's they're right by me, like that where they film it. It's very close to me. I see those guys around town all the time.
Oh, I love those guys.
Yeah. That's funny.
Yeah,
that's great.
Yeah, they're in Halifax as well, the same town as me. So like even Bubbles, he had a big bar. It recently closed down, but he had a bar called Bubbles Mansion, and it's like it was a massive bar. I was go all the time, and he'd just be hanging out there. And oftentimes he'd be loaded drunk in costume.
I had a hard time watching that show. I'm not gonna lie. I tried valiantly to watch Trailer Park Boys, and I just could not do it.
What's that?
Yeah, it's takes us. It's like a certain type of humor or something. I really dig it, but it's kind of like the sense of humor that that the show has is like. If you're like in like high school drama class writing plays or something, that's kind of like the amount of work that goes into that show.
Don't get me wrong. I really liked it, and I laughed my butt off. I had a hard time watching it because where we live is basically crackhead central. And everybody in town seems to be at least related to 4 people, just like the guys on Trailer Park Boys.
Hey, they're not crackheads. That is not the proper description.
Meth head zombies. We have The Walking Dead where we live.
You have never even watched an episode of that show if you think
I have never watched
You have to watch it. It is great.
Game of Thrones. I've never watched Game of Thrones. I say that quite valiantly.
I haven't watched that either.
I want to read the books. Well, Jordan, thank you so much for being on, man. I don't want to take too much more of your time. I know it's late there. We're on a whole different time zone. This has been great.
Oh, yeah. No problem.
This has been really awesome. So why don't you tell people where they can find you at?
Well, easiest spot is if you go to my website, nighttimepodcast.com. I have links to like all my social media, my Twitter, Facebook, and Instagram, and YouTube and stuff. But if to say hi, the best way is just go to @nighttimepod on Twitter. That's where I'm that's where I hang out most of the time.
Somehow I don't have you on Twitter. I have you everywhere else and not on Twitter. I don't
Gotta
know.
be there. That's right. Like I don't use Facebook as much. It's Twitter's kind of what I prefer.
I have no idea how I don't have you on Twitter yet. I'm gonna have to do that right after the show.
Oh, it's an easy thing to correct.
The other thing, yeah, very. And guys, the other thing I want to mention is Jordan has a Patreon account. I want you guys to go on and become patrons and help his show. And make sure you listen to his podcast and check out his sponsors and let his sponsors know. Use the code, the promo codes, and all that. Let's get this going for him because he's doing great and it's a great show and he's a great guy.
What are you talking about? It's already going for him.
Well, let's get it going more. I know how expensive this is, and we do a video one, and no, it's expensive.
This is better.
And this is much better.
But I don't do it for the money. Anyone who does it for the money, you're better off to quit podcasting and apply for a job at a coffee shop because there's no money in podcasting.
You're
not going to get rich this way, guys. But you know what? It's fun. My only goal is that everyone that does this, because this is like a community. Like, I feel like there's not a lot of people that it's hard to get on in front of people. It's even if you're anonymous, it's hard to get on and talk in front of people. It's hard to put your voice out there and to put this stuff together.
Even to put yourself on,
especially the particular kind of topics that we've decided to cover, what our passions are. We have very different passions than some people. And
I like Call of Duty. He likes Destiny too. I mean, I
like Call of Duty. You just like PlayStation. You're weird. But Jordan, thank you again so much for being on. I am a proud patron of the Nighttime Podcast. I'm going to hit you up pretty soon though for the new graphics for my stickers because I know you updated. I got them on the show.
I'm gonna get new stickers and shirts. When I get a shirt, I'll send you one with the new logo on it.
Okay.
Real quick though, before you go, I want to know PlayStation or Xbox. Come on.
Well, I date myself. I'd say I'm much more Super Nintendo, but
yes.
But on the last generation, I had both the Xbox, like a 360 and a PS3, but I didn't get either the new systems. I was kind of holding out. Like I'm really into Fallout, so like Fallout 3 and New Vegas, I had that on the Xbox, and then when Fallout 4 came out, I was going to get a console to play it, and I don't have the time. I find after I have a 4.5-year-old son, and after my son was born, I just like don't have time for anything.
Yeah, between that and the show,
just the minimum. So someday I'll maybe when I retire, I'll get like a PS4, 5, 6, 7, and just go through all the games I've missed.
Now, I will give you advice for Fallout 4. I'm a huge fan. I've got over 700 hours in Fallout altogether for both the games. And Fallout 4, I've got like 100. If you get it, you want a mod that has anti-defender. It stops you from having to defend because I swear to God, it's the most annoying thing on earth.
Dude, I played Fallout 4 for, I thought it was 20 minutes. It was 7.5 hours, so I don't play it anymore.
I absolutely love Fallout. Fallout 3 and New Vegas, I've spent so many hours, roaming around there. It's just, it's so cool.
I've got Fallout 3.
Wicked game, wicked writing, like the all the little stories and stuff in there are all so good. The team who made that is awesome.
Yeah, definitely.
You gotta love Bethesda.
Yeah, Bethesda.
Yeah, but I like simple games too. Like a game that I always go back to that I love is Maniac Mansion for the regular Nintendo.
Oh yes, I have it on my phone.
Yeah, I love that. Zach McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. I kind of like the old point-and-click adventure games, just because it's there's not a lot of game going on, but there's like a really cool story and cool dialogue and stuff.
Every couple of years, I'll go and I'll re-download Chrono Trigger for the Super Nintendo on my phone.
Oh yeah,
I'll try to get every ending before I'll stop playing it for like a year.
I will say one last thing because I know you got to go. If you love a game with storyline and you're a fan of PS3, get The Last of Us. That is a zombie game that's amazing.
I played that. I had that one. That game's awesome.
That's like a heartbreaking game, though. It's like sad. It's amazing.
What I really liked on PS3 was Heavy Rain for a game with great story.
See, I don't do the PlayStation thing. What we need to do, guys, is make sure you go to Jordan's Patreon, and you can donate more than just what he's asking as a patron. You can pledge more.
And I'll get Fallout 4.
And then he'll get an Xbox One. No! And then he and I can game. I'm going to give you my gamer tag after the show's over.
Choose my gamer tag. It's on PlayStation.
I wish I had time for that.
I know. Dude, since I started this show, I haven't had any time. Like, I'm gonna name drop the group of guys that I play with. I game with. It's MXCP Gaming. Some great guys. That's actually how I know Dave and all these guys that gave me the idea for the show and everything for tonight's show. The topic is through that, and man, it's a great community of people. And without them, we wouldn't have this show right now the way it is because they help boost this show so much. And guys, I don't thank them enough. You know, it's like the Murphy sisters. If it wasn't for them, we would have a much smaller group of people watching.
Yep.
So I like to give shout outs to the people that I know that watch every once in a while because it's just good to give back to those guys who give to us so much. But
Awesome.
Jordan, thank you so much, dude. What?
I appreciate you having me. I'm going to go watch Mayweather and McGregor fight. That's coming up soon, that boxing match. I'm really excited for it.
Hey, I'll tell you what, spoiler alert, they're both millionaires regardless of who wins.
Yeah.
All right, buddy, thank you so much. I hope you want to come on again one of these days for something else. That'd be great.
Anytime, buddy. We'll talk soon.
All right, Jordan, thank you.
Thanks, Sarah.
All right, have a good one.
Have a good one.
Guys, that was great, man. Jordan's awesome.
You totally cut him off.
I did. Jordan, if you're
We're
still watching, I'm sorry. I didn't hear you. I know you were in the middle of saying goodbye or something. Phone call conversations are difficult. What I need to do is get up a friggin' Skype thing. If I got to figure out how to hook that to the page, because I know we can do that through the the studio we use here.
It's getting a little difficult to just use the cell phone setup we've got.
I know, guys. It's so bad. Like I just paid extra money to have a better internet service provider, and I don't have it hardwired, and I don't have enough signal to broadcast. So I'm still using my stupid phone as a hotspot, and I'm using my other phone to make calls with guests.
And accidentally hanging up on people before they can finish what they're saying.
This is the kind of professionalism you've come to expect and enjoy from Vanishing Gates.
Only the most professional of professionalism from this place.
No,
we lose puppies, and then find them shortly after they
and then random children come knock on the door asking for waffles mid-show. It's great. It's awesome.
And Nutella. They wanted Nutella.
And Nutella. Oh, man.
Nutella.
Guys, thank you for watching. It's been awesome. Don't forget to check out our guest, Jordan. Is nighttimepodcast.com, right?
Yes.
And check him out on Twitter. Make sure when you go to Twitter, you tell them you heard about him from us. And to say hi and thanks for being on the show and making us sound like we're somewhat professional because we don't do well with that.
Yeah,
we don't.
It's not our thing. It's not.
Yeah, and don't forget to check out his Patreon and guys, become patrons for him because it's really cool. And we have one too. Don't forget if you want to like sign up for ours. It's not that I want a ton of money, but I want a ton of money. I mean, I'm not going to make it doing this.
Okay.
But I mean,
play the lottery.
I mean, I wouldn't
have
mind.
If you play the lottery, you'll have just as much.
If I could just afford cigars, I would be saving so much money.
Donate to the cigar fund.
Guys, anyway, thank you for watching. As always, I am your host, Jay. On behalf of Paco, this is
the puppy finder, Jack? Can I go with that? Because I didn't technically find the puppy.
That's a little creepy.
Okay, hold on.
That sounds really bad, like something you'd see on Nightline.
All right, hold on. I got this. The Imperial Jack. That's not working anymore because you have to.
It's working. We just can't hear it.
That's not going to work now, pal.
Oh,
the Imperious
Lord.
Jack. Imperious. It's a word, I think.
All right, guys. Please don't forget to like, follow, share, subscribe. Check out our YouTube page. If you haven't subscribed there, please do. It does us a big deal there. We need to get past 10,000 views on YouTube. Don't ask how many we have now. I'm not going to tell you. Just go
5.
Watch all of the episodes and comment.
Do it.
And if you guys have, I haven't done this in a while. We need to do this again because we haven't done this. If you guys have stories of the unexplained, the paranormal, if you have insight on Oak Island, maybe your great-great-grandfather has a secret manuscript you found in the attic that has a treasure map explaining what exactly is on Oak Island aside from just possibly liquefaction, let us know in the email. And
if you find One-Eyed Willie's treasure map, let us know.
Yeah, I'm going to make you truffle shuffle if you
you
quote them one more time. You got to leave me out my Ghostbusters quote. We have Slimer in the background, and we're trying to beg sincerely to get Dan Aykroyd on the show. So if you guys know Dan Aykroyd, anyway, email us at vanishinggates@gmail.com. It's vanishinggates with 2 G's in between. And make sure you send us your stories. And if you want to send your erotic fan fiction of Jack and Vin Diesel, make sure you send it R.E. Jack on top.
Wow, way to dig up an old joke. I mean, come on, that's a zombie at this point.
It's like the Mandela effect. Oh, I stole your thunder. Guys, see you next week at 7 o'clock p.m. Pacific Standard Time.
Did you already do our
Have a good one.
sponsors?
Yeah, we did our sponsors earlier today.
Okay, I didn't know. I wasn't here.
Yeah, you weren't here. You definitely phoned this one in. We all phoned this one in.
I showed up at 20 minutes. I looked at the clock.
All right, guys. We'll see you later. Thanks for watching.
Goodbye, everybody.